So what everyone would like to know is, we know you all started the club, but how did you meet?
How did we meet?
Yeah.
Well, my brother was driving a Judy in 1946, and Charles used to drive Hudson. And my brother said to Charles, "Why are you driving those old Hudson for? Get a Judy." And so the next thing we knew, Charles was in the Judy. And then I used to repair his Studebakers and different things. And he used to come home in the afternoon, picking up a car with Helen. And that's how the club started now. Charles was a bit slow starting the club, but Helen was quick. She went and put a knot in the edge. And that's how it started. So Helen started the club more or less. About that, Charles, yes?
So Helen, what did you think of Studebakers when you first saw them?
Well, we used to have so many people coming around to the house with their Studebakers. And in the end I said, well, we might do something about it, and we formed a club.
So if you can't beat them, you've got to join them.
And it was the best thing. It was a family club. We all brought our children.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really good. And it's great to see everybody here now, because it's amazing how the families are still coming, the same families, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Charles, what's your memory? So how many people were actually first members of the club? Like, how did you get the word out?
I put an ad in the Age, and from that, the first meeting, which we held at our home, I think there were about 30 people there. Wow. And I think down the back there's a list, and ones that are asterisked are still continuing members. So some of them have been members for 50 years, and which is wonderful.
And the first newsletter, did you write that as well?
Did I?
Well,
Most probably, yes.
I'll show you the book after. I brought it with me, Helen.
Okay, yes, I did. But then later on, well, Lois was our newsletter editor, and you know, she used to bring the things over, and we'd put them all out on the billiard table, and we'd collate them for the newsletter. So she's been doing a great job for the newsletter for, well, I don't know how long she did it for, but so.
What was your first car that you drove as a student?
Well, the 53.
53?
Yes.
And then how many have you owned over the years?
I've only ever owned the 35.
No, not true.
Oh yes, I owned that thing that I parked it on the hill at Berwick and couldn't get it to go up the hill. It was just so revved up, wasn't it?
No, it had a few problems, but it was set up for drag racing, actually. You have a little talk to Matthew Larson. He wants to speak to you.
Does he?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay. Later, Matthew.
So over the years, how many cars have you owned? Studebakers?
No, I don't know that many.
I've only ever owned those two.
I don't know, maybe a dozen altogether.
Yeah, all the running
It's hard to
ones.
say.
Maybe more.
What's the most you've had in the backyard at once?
I had 32, I think. Was it? How many was it? How many was it? 20,
I remember 26,
26.
but I was born in the 70s. There was a lot of time before then.
Yeah, we had a lot in the backyard, that's right.
We've still got a lot.
Always have trouble with joy cars on one side, the swing, the slides, swimming pool on one side. She had a white line in the middle of the yard.
Mum used to say, I've got a white line right down the middle of the yard. If you bring one bloody car over my side, that's it, they're out. And the funny thing is, they're still on one side of the yard. They haven't moved across even though Mum's gone. I think he's too scared.
The club's very first president is with us today and is going to say a couple of words. Robert?
Thank you indeed for the invitation to come along this afternoon. It's absolutely amazing, and I'd like to just say to your committee and to the members of the Studebaker Car Club, I really think it's absolutely fantastic that you've got the commitment and the dedication to the mark, to the Studebaker itself, and also to the club. And to celebrate 50 years, I say congratulations to you all. Yes, at the time when Charles was talking about trying to get a car club together, as a youngster, I was a car nut, and American cars of the 50s and the 60s were my forte, and Charles and I had a similar interest, and so when he invited me to to be part of it, I jumped at the chance and of course went along to the first meeting, and somehow or another I happened to be the voice, the fellow who stood up and spoke to everyone. So of course when they were calling for nominations for the committee, I think I got lumbered with it, and it was a couple of wonderful years of being part of the organisation right from the word go. We learnt as we went along. It was, as Helen said, it was a family club. It was very, it was informative. We were very, very lucky in that Helen and Charles gave us the opportunity to meet in the rumpus, their downstairs rumpus room. And yes, when the cars were leaving at about 10 o'clock at night, perhaps some of the neighbours might have heard it. But it was very informative, it was instructive, it was social, and we had lots of social outings. I was just mentioning to Helen on the way down here today, in those days we had a Super 8 camera, and we went to, we had an outing at Walhalla one time, and I've still got that on film. But the main thing, of course, was the people. It's the same with all organisations, but the people were absolutely lovely, and it's just wonderful to see people here today. Bob and Jim dusting. Jim had a lovely hawk, and now tells me he's got a two-door hawk. Gentleman Jim Quigley, and Barry McGregor was our treasurer, and just the names that I see and remember, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. We had some.
Now, Gloria has been a long time member of the South Australian Colour Club, so we've known her for a very long time, close enough. What I do remember, Gloria is a beautiful person, but what I particularly remember about Gloria, and I'm sure many of you would know her this way, is that she has a genuine interest in people. And I would recall as a child, teenager and into my adult years, and then we would be meeting at national meets, that Gloria, she'd just make a beeline for you, and she'd want to know all about your family. She'd ask about events that have been happening. She'd remember children's names and so on, and keenly be interested in what had been happening ever since. And that would only be every second year. But that's what I remember most vividly about her, and I'm sure, and I would hope to think that everyone has similar memory, and I'm sure you all do.
We had a meeting in Mount Gambier, which South Australia participated with Victoria, and I'm pretty well sure that was one of the earlier get-togethers. Following that, a lot of us went to the Victorian concourse. Victoria people came over to our concourse. It started basically like that. We've been to every national there has been in Australia. We wouldn't miss one of those because we've got so many friends now in the club. It's a people thing, as well as the Studebakers. So we've not missed a national, and we try and get to the concourse, but not so much lately. But we would never miss a national.
This and that about Ray and Gloria. This is from Warren Thompson from Newcastle. Ray and Gloria. I first met them during the national meet when Adelaide was the host. This may have been 1979. We seemed to hit it off, so to speak, and they were very gracious to invite us back. We would meet up with them at Bendigo Swap Meet every year. We would also stay with the Crunkhorns every year when we went to the Formula One races in Adelaide. On one evening in Adelaide, we all went downtown looking around, just window shopping, and we all bought a large soft cone ice cream. As we were walking along, Ray's ice cream fell off the cone to the path. Without missing a step, Ray stooped down and picked it up in one swipe, thinking we may not notice.
Probably Alan Hyde, as I think you were present. Bob Godley's brother Ostic drove over to Adelaide with Bob and Alan. Ostic wanted to visit the mid-north. He said it's a town called Mintero. There's a car up there I'd like to look at. Now that is a little town in the mid-north of Adelaide. The next town is Clare, then Port Pirie. It's a wine region. However, we said we'll all go up with you, Osti. So we arrived at Mintero at George's house where the car was being sold. And Osti knocked on the door, and this elderly couple answered the door, being George's mum and dad. And Osti said, "I'm here to see George." And his mum said, "Oh, George isn't here, he's up Clare. He's been up Clare all night." And Osti turned around and he said to our guys, "Who's this Clare Sheila?" We're travelling back from Broken Hill, probably a couple of years ago now, and it was a fairly barren road. One tree maybe we saw, and way in the distance there was a figure emerging from behind the tree, and I said to Ray, well, no need to know really what that person was there for. So we drove past and Ray said, "My lord, that's June and Jim Dusting." So we did a quick U-turn and came belting back. Meanwhile, June, I'll let her tell you.
You were quite scared, remember?
Yes, I was scared stiff because we were just two little grey-haired people in the middle of nowhere. And I thought, oh my God, it's turning around, the car. And I went to get in, and next minute they pulled up and Jim said, "Don't worry, have a look who it is. Gloria and Ray Crunkhorn in the middle of nowhere."
Before I answer that, I was just going to tell you our early memories of the Studebaker movement was meeting Walter Island and Bert Needham. They were icons to us. We were in awe of them.
You said you were one of the youngsters.
We were the youngsters way back then, and it was amazing. And all the people like Alan Hyde and Jim Quigley and a lot of people that, of course, I can't name because I don't really remember their names. Des Skinner, he was always a great parts man. It was just how we've evolved and moved on. And we are the elderly people of the club now, and it's great to see the young ones having an interest in the cars.
Just about what you hope for the future.
Yeah, well, my hope for the future is let's hope that Studebaker lives on and the people you meet are beautiful here and overseas, forever friends. Thank you.
I'm sure a large part of his collection has been acquired through his many friends and associates in the Studebaker Drivers Club on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. And it's that association Jim is going to share a few words with us today.
My daughter says, "That's you, Dad. Just get up, please." Must be getting a bit slow. Anyway, thank you all for coming today from a fellow member. And going back 50 years, and just like Robert reminiscing over there, takes me back 50 years, and even then, a couple of my memorabilia items may be down there, I'm not sure, but I had a couple then. But more of a dream as I went into the club for the first 1, 2, maybe 3 years, I wanted to go to the United States for a meet. And I thought I'd just mention this in a positive way for some of you out there that are dreaming of doing the same thing. I'm confident that quite a few of you that haven't been will go, and if you're not thinking about it, do think about it for the future, because it's a lovely experience seeing Studebakers over there that you just can't imagine. And while we have our collection here, and in more recent years, more varieties of Studebaker have come into the country from what we assembled in this country here, Australia. So we I think we were motivated somewhat. I was more motivated to go because Helen and Charles Schwerkow went. I think they were the trailblazers back in '72 perhaps. And in '73 I had this dream of going to Colorado Springs. Wow, you know, Colorado Springs, the Air Force Academy and everything. On top of that, friends of mine in Colorado Springs, come and stay with us. So what can you do? You go and get a plane ticket. So Greta's sort of saying, oh, okay, you know, enjoy yourself sort of thing. And as it got down closer, she says, oh, I think I might come. And sure as eggs, we had a wonderful time on our first trip. So things like that, and following, my God, here's the legend, Ian Mackey himself. The man has got his original Studebaker, I might say. Thanks for coming, Ian. Anyway, so going on, I think maybe the next meet was perhaps Helen and I were involved in getting 20-odd Studebaker enthusiasts, mainly in Melbourne, a few in South Australia, and I think a scratching out of Sydney and maybe Brisbane. And we had a great time over there, an adventure over there. We were all together for a while. We went to the meet at Indianapolis, which was sensational. Then we all split for a while, and then we met back somewhere, perhaps San Francisco, and I think maybe we all came home together. So, you know, those memories come into my mind now, and I do say to you, the ones that haven't been, do think about it or do go in the future. And that's evidenced by later members that have been. The Pinks come to mind, the Salters come to mind, and a few others. We all have a wonderful time there. So do it, think about it, and do it in the future, and I'll think of you. And just one other thing, when I came back and I was so restless of having had a great time, I two past members, one no longer with us, let me think, Clyde Johnson and Bob Clark. I just was at them all the time to go. Finally, Bobby Clark went on his own, maybe sometime in the 70s, ended up buying a couple of cars, piggybacking one on top of the other over the Rockies and back to the west side of the United States, and he's still got them at home now. Yeah. So you can have a wonderful time in the States. So I thought that was the theme to talk to you on. Thanks for your time.
Curiosity, have you got any interesting stories about club members that you can think of? Don't feel that you're committed to have to answer this. You may not have any, but given what I've heard tonight, there must be an interesting story in there somewhere.
I think Bob Godley will remember this one. We went to the Adelaide Nationals, and back then I had the VS Commodore that we used to travel up into, and I used to follow Bob in his Stevie. We dropped the girls off at the Adelaide station where the
gambling den.
What is it? The
gambling den.
Yeah, the gambling den. And we took off and we went to Munta, because Bob reckons they've got fantastic pies and pasties. So we went off there and we're having lunch and we're mucking around up there. And what time is it, Bob? Oh, hang on, we better go pick up the girls. We better get back there and pick up the girls. So we made it back there, and we walked in, and the girls are sitting down still playing the pokies. Bev's there, Joy's sitting next to Bev, and there's a bloke sitting next to Joy, and he's facing away slightly to Joy, and Joy was talking about football. And Joy said to me, I think he's a one-eyed Adelaide supporter. And he turned around and he had a patch over his eye. that was a classic. That was so natural. That was really funny.
How long it took and how difficult it was to restore the car?
Well, I bought it from Ashley Cronin up in Dalesford. It was one of his, and I got it down in Melbourne, and then once I joined the club, with assistance of a lot of people, Bob Godley and Alan Hyde, their assistance was great, and it probably took me 9 years to do it. I didn't do all of it myself, I did a fair bit of it, but the people I met was making friends and things like that. It was great. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Gary. That gives a bit of a history. So it was quite an impressive win when you consider it took that amount of time to put it all together. And it's a beautiful machine. If any of you have seen it at any of our concourse in recent years. Now, this is a bit of a.
This dates back to way back when I was very new into the club, and I was looking for a half-decent Studebaker, right? It was about 1976, and I bought somebody's 1961 Hawk, which I still have. I keep telling people I bought it when I was a boy. I'm 62 now, what does it tell you? But I did buy it off one of the members back in, I think about November 1976, I think it might have been. And I was as pleased as punch with this bloody thing, fins, the whole thing, it didn't look too bad really. It was bloody horrible underneath, but it looked good on top. And I drove this thing to work one day. I'd just come out of my apprenticeship, and I actually drove this thing down the driveway, down around the back of the workshop, and of course one of the bosses was walking across the road, and this thing was going thump, 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 thump. I thought, what the bloody hell's that racket? And I thought to me, it was magnifying. It was only 4.5 miles from home, but this thump, 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 thump was getting louder, and I thought, what the bloody hell's that? And of course, here's me, proud as punch with this befinned thing. And the boss took, one look, he stopped and took another look, and I thought, okay, he's seen it, and it's going thump, 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 and it's getting louder. Well, I actually drove the rotten thing home, and I wondered what the devil this noise was, and I took it for a high-speed run down, I can't remember, Forest Street and Sunshine, or Ardea back in those days. I think I got up to about 70 mile an hour. And if I backed it off, it went thump, 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 thump. Well, I got it home, and I finally figured out what it was. I don't think it was me, I think it was the previous owner. He'd forgotten to do up the lug nuts on the back left-hand wheel. Yeah, and by the time I thought, that wheel's loose, that wheel's stuffed, because in actual fact all the holes had flogged out to about nearly the size of a nut. It was just about ready to fall off, but it didn't matter. The studs were just probably about halfway to sheared anyway. They were sort of wasp waisted down to about 1/4 inch thick. And I thought to myself, next time you buy a car, make sure all the lug nuts are done up, for Christ's sake, and don't take it for any high-speed runs.
Stories you can tell about them, about how you acquired them, or some of the stories you came across when you were putting them together or reassembling them from the bits and pieces that you had?
No, not really. A lot of it is impulse, and they just happened to be there, and they were looking for a home. So I had a very tolerant wife, and so it just happened.
Okay, that's interesting. It just happened, I suppose. That's probably like a lot of things in life, but I mean, what in particular would have driven you, or what was the magnet that brought you to the Studebaker brand in particular?
Our family car, when I was a kid, was a 1937 Dictator, and that was probably the start of.
That was the hook?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the hook?
Yes, that's correct.
That's
correct, yes. I really wanted, and Charles will tell you this, that I really wanted a bullet. I thought the bullet nose Studebaker was a real thing. I still think it is. Okay. And that's what I initially wanted. But circumstances led me to a 53 and a 52, and did a little bit of the story of Bob Godley swapping a few plates around and things like that. So there are some interesting photos around in the club's history. And that was it. Probably the greatest thing I got out of it, and the family, of course. And we were blessed in that we came into the club when it was very, very strong family, extremely strong. And our children were very similar age group to many other families. Jim and Greta, the Quickly girls, the Godley girls, Hardys. God, there'll be some names escape here. But so that became a great thing, because whilst I was able to pursue the car club side of it, the family was able to have enjoyment also. And that was critical, to be able to have the cars and have the family.
Social connection.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good point, and I think those two things are probably the critical things that bind the club together, aren't they? And probably not just car clubs, but I think the fact that you've got the interest there specifically of the members and the connection beyond it that also gets the other half of the story involved that may not necessarily have that deep and abiding interest in cars necessarily.
Happy wife, happy life.
60 convertible. We've just ambushed Gary before.
I thought you weren't going to ambush people.
Well, I know. That was part of the plan, but we're very flexible. So we're just going to ask a couple of questions. I guess the first one, Leon, you've been a club member for some time. Can you just give us a bit of a potted history on how you ended up in the Studebaker Car Club?
It's a long time ago. I was living in Canberra in the mid-70s, and my next door neighbour, through him, the young lad there who had married one of the daughters, his father had a Studebaker, and he said, oh, there's a national meet on down in Cooma this year. I think that was 75. So we hopped in the car for the day and went down there, and that's when it started. And I'd already bought the 64 Cruiser about just after I left school, and saw it in the paper. My dad said, don't buy that, but I did. So that's how it started.
In 89, 90 and 91, you won with your 61 Hawk. The first question I have to ask, given the years there that are indicated there, Neville, how long have you been a member of the club, Neville?
I've been a member of the club 50 years come July.
Okay, so you're one of the original gang.
I attended the first meeting to discuss being a club formed, and I was a Studebaker dealer then, dealer principal, which I was, I think, the last one dismissed as a Studebaker principal.
Okay, in Victoria or in Australia?
Victoria.
Okay.
And I delivered a 66 wagon in 1967, brand new.
Right.
And that was the last one we picked up and delivered. Also, people that might see around the Studebaker ambulance, I sold that as a car to the service. I drove it in service when it was completed as an ambulance officer, and it's been through a few hands just before and after, but it is now back at the Ambulance Museum. A lot of people will see that around. So that was a bit of the history of that. The 61 Hawk I've just passed on.
Right.
I think my power steering failed, power brakes failed. So I've now got a 63 Cruiser.
Okay, with power steering?
With power steering, with power brakes, with bucket seats and with air conditioning. Getting a bit old.
It works. Okay. Right, Neville. A question I have, given that you've now outlined you were one of the last Studebaker dealers to be ticked off the list when they folded in Victoria, just out of curiosity, how well did you find the cars used to sell in your particular area? Obviously you're down Bairnsdale, down that way. How did they sell compared to the other competition of the day?
We sold pretty well, but we must remember we had two Holden dealers in the town, not far from one another, both selling Holdens, so they gave them away. So it made selling them pretty difficult, but we did sell a number of the V8s and even to the Chevy V8s. A couple of them that I could remember. One I'll remember in particular that we sold. A chap came through from Greenacres from Sydney, called in his old Holden, and he looked at the beautiful brown Studebaker Cruiser sitting there, and he said, "I'll buy that on the way back." And I said, "Oh yeah, that'll be the day." On the way back, he called in and he said, "Rightio, I've got the cash," and did quite a winnings from the Melbourne Cup and drove that car home paying cash for it. But we did sell, and there were quite a few Studebakers around the area, and there's still a few around in sheds.
Okay.
And one of them that was sold in the area new was a 1926 Studebaker utility, which was built up in Bairnsdale as a utility. That is still in a shed in the area.
And is also the third generation from the same family in the club as well. And here I have some scripted questions, which makes it easier for me. It says, how does it feel to be the youngest member in a 50-year-old club?
It's an extremely humbling experience to be part of a club that has such a deep and long history. And obviously the stories I'm hearing, some of them for the first time and some not, which is just even more special to hear it from the people that were a part of it. It's just fantastic to be able to share the memories with the people of the club, because coming from a family that's very Studebaker oriented, it's just very special for me to be able to share that with all of you, and and continue to be involved with the club. More so now with getting involved in the greasy side of it, but the social side, I definitely have to say is equally as important, if not more. It is a family club, and I hope it always will be.
Thank you. That's an excellent response, but you're not off the hook yet. Now, this is a very interesting question. It says, how are you going to recruit your mates so you still have a club another 30 years down the track?
Well, the way we do it where I work, you spin them a $20 gift card, but I don't think that's going to quite cut it. I have to say, with the people I know, my friendship groups, it's incredible to see how much of an interest there is in old car restoration and just the history. So I feel like alone, I don't have to be so concerned, because I think the cars themselves, the club, as Studebaker is, it's a fascinating history, ups and downs, and the reinventing of things. I think that's just going to, by itself, it's going to naturally attract people to the club. But at the same time, to be promoting ourselves like we did with the concourse and the ongoing success of our nationals and the small local events, it all adds up at the end of the day to making the club so attractive and so active.
As I said, our life members, Noel Hardy, Lois Hyde, Bob Godley, Ivor Lewis, Jim Dusting, Charles Schwerkolt and Ellen Hyde. And they're going to award life membership to the following people today. Alan Clements, thank you Susie, on behalf of your dad, Jim Wells and Jim Quigley. Lois?
Congratulations.
You guys can stand, perhaps we could have a photo of the whole life membership group, please.
But at one stage there, June, I think, turned her hand to some knitting, and so you had a very niche, very specific product that she was willing to market, and made a few for various club members. I thought maybe you could elaborate a little bit about that.
What was that? What are you talking about? No!
Oh, yeah. They were only available to 50% of the population. And it didn't take very long to knock some up. Some of them probably took less time than others to knock up. But, I don't know why that came about, but June was always good fun at all those meets where you find a a pair of blow-up legs hanging out the bottom of a car. She's up to a lot of mischief, June. She's a champion. It's good fun to tour around with. All right. You give me nothing, June. Thanks for that. Very harsh. In terms of motor cars and how the performance was in that.
I sure do, and I've had the speeding tickets to prove it. And I was so pleased the day at Ray Fullard's when I drove both our Lark and Barney, and I beat not only my husband but all the men to become the first woman to take the outright at the Motorcana. Thank you.
Everyone has had a raffle ticket put in front of their face today, and we would love you to draw out a winning ticket for someone special to win this special prize from you.
Number 5.
Look on that.
It's a blue 34.
That's wonderful.
No. It's really warm as I know. Thank you.
Please.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you.
Terrific. As I said, June's a very special person at the club, a real treasure, and thank you for donating that, June. And yeah, terrific.
Beautiful. Beauty colours.
I noticed. How long did it take you?
Ages. Well done, June.
One, two, three. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Judy. Happy birthday to you. Hooray! 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 Life members, please do the honours. Go for it.
Any less for me? There you go. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, guys.